Welcome to the Marketing Mastermind, a podcast designed to elevate your entrepreneurial mindset and help you take your business to the next level through digital marketing. Join your host, agency owner Hilary Russell, as she interviews experts from around the world, dives into business success secrets, and gives tactical mindset training to help you elevate all areas of your life and business. Ready? Let's dive into another Marketing Mastermind episode.
All right, welcome to another episode of the Marketing Mastermind. Today, the topic that we are discussing and the question that we're uncovering is, what do you need to know? What do you need to have in place before you start your entrepreneurial journey? And this is a bit of a loaded question. I've brought my good friend Tyler Caldwell here with me today. Tyler, say hello to everyone.
How's it going, everyone?
Tyler, you're based in, remind me what part of Canada you're in?
In Alberta, Calgary.
Alberta, that's right. Okay. You moved though, not too long ago, right?
Yeah, it was just about like 3 hours south. I was in Edmonton for quite a while. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. Okay, sweet. And Tyler has been running his agency. He specializes in digital ads, Facebook advertising, and serves, the name of your company, Blue Collar Leads, kind of speaks for itself there. So serving the blue collar community. Yeah, that's awesome. Very cool. And the reason I wanted to bring Tyler into this conversation specifically is because, well, honestly, every time that we talk about this, you and I could literally talk about this topic for hours and hours and hours. Mm-hmm. I feel like every time that we do a coaching or training or anything like that together with the entrepreneurs that we work with, our conversation just flows on this topic. So I'm excited. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a heavy one. That's why it's easy.
Yep, exactly. Yeah. So before we dive in, and before we start talking about the most important things to know before you start your entrepreneurial journey, give us a little bit of background on you, Tyler. I mean, I know we've been friends now for almost 2 years since we met. Kind of crazy. But give the listeners a little peek into, how you got to where you are now and a little bit of your experience. You've got an interesting story, so.
Yeah, I mean, I started out, I'm a heavy duty mechanic by trade. I started out, so that's, I stepped away from that probably close to 5 years ago now, I suppose. Maybe I'm into my 6th year now. I don't know. Time flies when you're having fun, but so I was a mechanic, and I seen an ad online one time about it was actually an MLM how I got started. Got in there, they did some basic Facebook ads training, and I was just promoting my own business with Facebook ads, and then I got really good at it. I started doing it for other people in the community. The guy that brought me in, I ran all of his ads, and I didn't really charge him anything. I created over $1 million. I helped him create over $1 million in revenue with the ads. I never charged him anything, but what I got to do is I got to learn my craft. I wasn't charging him to do it, but I was learning my craft with his money. So I think it was a good back and forth. He got something out of it. I got something out of it. And then, I started to move in a different direction from the MLM. I'm like, I seen the sales were drying up. Things were kind of shifting because I ran so many people's ads that were in that community, like selling that same product, that I seen the writing on the wall before everybody else, because I could see the data, I could see the things were switching. So I was like, what can I do? I don't want to go back pulling wrenches. What can I do to continue moving forward? So I just started charging people for running their Facebook ads. And that's kind of basically how I started with the agency. It wasn't even like, hey, I want to start an agency, or like, I want to go in that direction. It just kind of happened that way. And then I just started taking on clients. And this amazing thing is a lot of people think like when you give your stuff away for free, that you're giving away for free. But that one relationship that I had where I generated all that money for him, he's actually the single person that helped me build my agency at the very beginning. I built basically the whole thing through networking. I used to go to events. I used to go to these things, that was my target market, people that are selling courses and stuff like that. So I used to go to those events, networking, and I went to one with him. And I remember I was right at the end where I was like, if I don't get some clients, I'm going to have to go back pulling wrenches because I got kids to feed and stuff. And so we went to an event together, and we went around the parties, and we went all the things. And he was just going to bat for me. And I came back from that event, And I think we picked up like 5 clients at that event alone. And then it was just, things started to roll from there. And within like a month and a half to 2 months after that, we were up to like 17 clients. It was in that range. It was just really quick. It happened so fast. And then I hit a complete different, overwhelm. I had way too much work. I was doing it all myself. I didn't, because I grew so fast that I didn't have the opportunity to hire people. And again, like we say lots of times, is you need to hire people before you need them, because I hit that situation where I tried to get some people in to actually, do, like a internship doing ads and things. But when I started training them, it was taking me longer to train them than it would have been just to do it myself. And I was at that like maximum. So I didn't have any bandwidth left to train. So I just continued moving. And then I hit a burnout, and then things turned south in a hurry. So it's very important to set that up, but we'll get into that in the future. But that's kind of how I got started in this. And then of course, through networking, through just everybody that I met, some people that I knew from the past started working at Entre, and they're like, hey, do you want to come over and start coaching in the agency side there? And I almost didn't do it. And because I was so maxed out, I was so busy, and I didn't know if I wanted to move in that direction. And I got started in Entre, but it was they were teaching agency in a different way. I'd always done Facebook ads as an agency. That's the only service I offered. So when it came over here, it was like SEO and these other things. So they were like, hey, try to learn it, try to implement that in your business. And then I started to, and that's the best thing I ever did, because now I can build a business that like, I'm not constantly in it. Because before I was the business, I was the, as a Facebook ads expert, I was the business. Take me out of it and the business dies. Now I can do both. I can be the Facebook ads expert and grow my business. And be able to scale it much further than I did before.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, that's super cool. It's so crazy too, that, you had such a quick spurt of growth at the beginning, starting your Facebook ads agency, and then you've got different problems on your hands, right?
Yeah. And then lots of different problems come up. And then, when we hit COVID, just before that, there was a big slowdown. I lost a whole bunch of clients. I remember in the one December, it was, I don't know how many Decembers ago. I said that was 3 Decembers ago, maybe, or 2. I can't remember exactly what the day was, but I lost 5 clients in 1 month with like no warning. And that was like, at that time, it was about half of my recurring revenue was gone in 1 month. And that was Christmas, so you already bought all the gifts for the kids and all these other things happened. So it was a real big, it was a big slap for me. And and then moving forward, I started losing more clients, because the first thing a lot of people cut out when business gets bad with everything that was happening is they cut you out. Right. And so I had to shift, I had to pivot, and then I started doing some contracting for another big agency in the States. They're based out of there, and it's 7 Mile Media. Amazing company. They do amazing work, like for high-end Facebook ads and stuff like that. Amazing company. But when I started there, I thought I was good with Facebook ads, but I was like, I had so much to learn, because the most I'd ever spent is like, $100 to $300 a day at the most. And then when I was there, I had a client spending like $15,000 a day. So it was a completely different scenario. Right. Yeah. But I learned a boatload when I was there, and it was a great pivot, because they gave me all the leads that I never had to do any marketing. They gave me all the clients, and, I got in again, a comfort zone. And so when we were here at Entre, I had to pick. I was like, do I continue moving forward? I was making way more money running campaigns for them than I was over, working with Entre. But at that point, it was a decision between going towards passion compared to money. So I loved the coaching. I loved doing what I was doing at Entre way more than I loved doing campaigns. So it was a decision that I cut out a big portion of my revenue again, and I made another pivot, which was again a very difficult decision, but it was definitely the right decision for me, for sure.
Sure. Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, very cool. Well, and I think too that that pivots perfectly into our topic of one of the most important things that you need to have in place as an entrepreneur, or that you need to be developing on a regular basis as an entrepreneur, and that is your mindset, right? Your mindset and personal development. And I mean, we talk about this all the time, that you'll get to a point, I mean, early on in your journey as an entrepreneur, you'll get to a point where there's so much, it feels so overwhelming, and there's so many things going on. And you and I both talk about this, Tyler, with the students that we work with at Entre Institute, that at that point, really, it's just the universe or life telling you that, hey, it's time to prove that you're ready to level up. You're ready to push on to the next level. Right.
Yeah.
And it depends, how you come out of that scenario is, that's going to justify whether or not you make it to the next level, or you stay in the same place and keep going through the same cycle until you're able to prove and, make that step forward or on to the next step. So, okay. So that being said, what would you say is one of the first pieces that someone should be, putting in place or starting to think about for their mindset to prepare to run and launch a successful business?
Yeah, I think that, again, that's kind of a loaded question. We could talk about this for a long time, but I think one of the main things that's helped me and allowed me to, because like my journey has not been easy. I'd had to crawl through a mile of broken glass to get here. Even though I had quick growth at the beginning and everything, I've had a lot of other issues that have come up, and I never had like a coach. I never had anybody to guide me. I was basically just screwing it up and then adjusting and screwing it up and adjusting. And that's how I got here. But, I think the biggest thing for me was just always being grounded in gratitude. I think gratitude is like the biggest thing that started, for me changing who I was. Because before I got into business, I was nowhere near the person I am now. I was angry a lot of the time. I had problems with drugs, alcohol, all these other different things I had. And when I got into business, actually moving into business and being an entrepreneur saved my life. I truly believe that. And a lot of it started from being grounded in gratitude, because what happens, like when we have so much to be thankful for already. And a lot of times what we do is we start a business because we think we want to do it for money. Right. Or we think that money is going to fix the problem, but money doesn't ever fix the problem. And you can never move forward in your life if you're not already grateful for what you have. And so being grounded in gratitude at the very beginning, I think is what allowed me to have success really quickly. Yeah. This was actually something that was taught to us right from the beginning. It was one of the first books. The Magic is a 28-day gratitude exercise from Rhonda Byrne. And that book alone set me on the right path. And when I went through that the first time, I noticed a difference from the first to the 7th day. Like I was 7 days into this thing and I was like, wow, this is a massive shift in me already just doing 7 days. And when you go through a 28-day program like that, it's very transformational.
Yeah. Yeah. That's cool. I like to kind of nerd out on this topic too, because not only is it something that's, it's important. It's like makes you feel better, whatever, but there's also scientific evidence behind it that it improves your opportunities for success. Right. I mean, we hear about, or we talk about the law of attraction, which is great. And, for those that are familiar with the concept, right, there's those of us that talk about it like it's basically like scientific evidence, and those that are like, oh, it's kind of like voodoo, weird, whatever. Yeah. But but in my mind, I'm like, okay, I like to think of or find scientific evidence that basically proves these types of theories, right? And there's a part in our brain, the reticular activating system, that essentially what it does is it filters out the things in your life or the things that are around you that you view as important, right? So it's basically when you're in a crowded room and someone says, "Hey, Tyler," and you can pick out that sound because your name is obviously important to you, right? Yeah, it's your reticular activating system. It's like, hey, someone said your name, right? Or the same thing that when you buy a new car and you drive off the lot and all of a sudden you start seeing that new car that you're driving, you see multiple people driving it on your way home, right?
Everywhere.
Yeah, exactly.
Even if you're just looking into one, you see them everywhere.
Yeah, exactly. That doesn't necessarily mean that all of a sudden everyone's driving that car. It just means that your reticular activating system is noticing that it's important to you and it's bringing that into your reality. But it's the same thing with what you're talking about here, like focusing on gratitude and focusing, making that a regular part of your daily routine. Even it's more than just being grateful. It's rewiring your brain to notice those opportunities for things to be grateful for, right? Noticing those opportunities for success. Exactly. Right. It's like basically rewiring your reality. right?
100%. And I mean, the main reason that your brain does that is because if you actually noticed everything that your brain is bringing in at all times, you would burn out. Like your brain would burn up because there's so much more information around us than what we're actually seeing. And it's what you focus on. And that's what they say. So some people are like, that doesn't make sense. What you focus on, more of it comes around. But in a lot of ways, it's so true. Because when you're in a state of gratitude, and this is the best part about it, you cannot be angry and grateful at the same time. You cannot be resentful and grateful at the same time. You can't be negative and grateful at the same time. So the longer that you live in that realm, exactly what you just said, you notice more things to be grateful for. And this is what I noticed when I first got into it. At first, I had a hard time thinking of 10 things I was grateful for. Like at first, I was like, man, 10 things, really? That's a big list. And then when you get farther along in the process, you could write 500 things in that same session because it never ends, the things that you're actually grateful. And you go deeper and deeper and deeper into it. And you start to realize that we don't actually live in such a bad world when you get into that realm, because you're like, man, we have so much to be thankful for that we just take for granted every single day. And that's why it's one of the most important exercises is because when you're in that mode, you're happier, you're more energetic, you're a better person to be around. You attract people that are probably in that same frequency. And the thing is, most business owners are at least a little bit down the personal development path, because to be a business owner, you have to be on that path, because if not, you're like, I don't think you'd be able to function long term. Like you'd be able to do it short term, but long term success in a business, I don't think you could do it without being at least in that personal development realm.
Yeah, that's very true. Okay, I'm going to ask kind of generalized question, I guess. But for those individuals that are like, okay, personal development, that's cool. Like I like to be better, a better human being. But what does that actually mean, personal development? And I guess like from your perspective, Tyler, what does it mean both on a personal level and professional level?
Yeah, I mean, I think personal development, I mean, again, yeah, it's a big industry. It's a big subject altogether, because there's different areas of being personally better. You could be personally better physically, mentally, emotionally. And I think there's you kind of have to hit on all of them. Emotional intelligence is probably one of the most important, because if you are strong emotionally, then you can handle all ranges of situations, right? And the thing is that the thing what you learn while being an entrepreneur is you learn to be better emotionally as you go anyway, because if you don't, you go absolutely mental. Because the things, if you got like bent out of shape with every little issue that you ran into being an entrepreneur, you go crazy. And this is one of the reasons why most people can't do it. Most people can't make that transition of like just getting up for a job and then making a transition where it's like you have to be like self-starting. And it's also the excitement of not knowing where your next paycheck's gonna be coming from. That is a big thing too. And if you're not strong emotionally, mentally, physically is always good because it gives you energy to be an entrepreneur. But the mental game is the biggest thing. I think 90% of business is in the head. Only 10% is pulling the levers, because there's so many courses, so many ways you can learn how to grow a business. But the intangible thing is like, how do you handle it mentally? Like,
right.
When you don't know where you're going to get your next money to feed your family, when you're down to like when you're hustling and you run into a situation like me where I lost 5 clients and all my income was gone. And now I'm like, well, like, how am I going to make my payments when I have like that kind of a situation to run into? And and so if I wasn't strong mentally, I would have completely imploded and I would have just went back to work. Right. Yeah. But it's like that's why you have to be strong in the head more so than anything else, in my opinion.
Right.
So it's more of like the emotional and the way that you look at yourself is the big thing as well. Self-talk, these kinds of things. And I mean, it's such a vast subject. That's the thing. It's like there's so many different areas you could go into it. That's why, when you look at it as, okay, I'm going to start a business and one day I'll arrive at success. I think success is not something you arrive at ever. I think a success is like the lifelong journey of becoming a better person every single day. And I think that when I switched my mindset to looking at it like that, it became much more fun and it became, much more interesting to approach, because the business of what we do is only the vehicle in which we use to have the freedom that we want. That's all it is. Right. It's so, it's the fact that I have the freedom, the extra revenue and the extra things I can pour back into myself constantly. I invest in myself more than I invest in anything else. I invest in myself more than I invest in stocks, more invest in like other assets. I invest in me. Right. And because you are the most important asset in your life. Right.
Yeah. Yeah. That's very true. Yeah. I was actually reading something the other day that said that, basically, as entrepreneurs, we are, in a positive way, one of like the most selfish with our time, because in every single other, type of career or, business or job that you might have, you're, let me figure out how I want to say this. Let's say working a 9 to 5, right? Working a 9 to 5 job, you go in, you punch into the clock. And if you want a raise or whatever, you go and talk to the person that you report to and you say, hey, I need a raise and this is why. As an entrepreneur, you don't do that. As an entrepreneur, you have to make yourself more valuable, for the hours that you put in every single day. So as an entrepreneur, we don't really have necessarily the luxury of clocking in at a certain time and then just forgetting about everything else, outside of business hours, right? Because literally the amount of development, personal and professional development that we put in outside of business hours is what justifies how much money our time is worth during those business hours, right? Or with those clients, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And it also goes down to the fact of like, you're a product of the people that you hang out with as well. So it's hard sometimes, because I know I went back to work temporarily, when I first started 5 years ago, because I had like a $20,000 bonus. If I went back for a couple months, I got that bonus, and then that's when I quit after that. But I found when because I was 10 months, 11 months into my journey on this personal development, path. And when I went back to work, I noticed the negativity much more than I ever noticed it before. Right. Because I lived in the negativity. So like we'd be sitting in the lunchroom and the boys would be talking, and I realized how much like negativity and like complaining and just like it was exhausting to be around, because I noticed it at a different level than I did before. So I had to limit my time with that.
Yeah.
And it's not that I disliked those people. I still like them. I still talk to them. I'll go and have a beer with them every once in a while, whatever the case is. But I couldn't spend large amounts of time with them because I felt myself being, almost going backwards in a way. Right. So, you also become a little bit more choosy on the people that you hang out with as well, because like if they're not on the right same wavelength as you, it's way more difficult to spend time with people. Right.
That's so true. Okay. Let's talk about that for a second, because that's something that we've talked about it before. We've had, I think we actually did like a class on it once, like a while ago, we talked about this, but it is a very interesting thing that I think that every entrepreneur goes through at some point in their early stages, that you start to realize like, man, this vision, this mission that I have, this drive that I have, that's literally pushing every single action that I'm taking right now. It seems crazy to the outside world, to the society that we're surrounded with, but those individuals in my life that don't align with this mission, all of a sudden you start to realize like, it's not really productive to have that influence in your life any longer. And let's talk about that a little bit, because I've also had too, like almost conversations where it's like, is it okay that I'm like moving away from some of these relationships, or that, I don't necessarily want to spend time in the same places that I was before. Right. Like, let's talk about that, because that's a big shift that is not necessarily something that gets talked about very often.
No. And I think it's funny because this probably, like, it's just kind of funny how everything works out like that. But this is probably one of the biggest subjects in becoming an entrepreneur, is noticing that this fact that you're going to go through it. A lot of new business owners will quit when it gets to this point that I'm just going to talk about right now. One of the biggest things that people go through is when you make that transition from like you're hanging out with your friends and they're all talking about like fights they had in high school still, and you're trying to move forward and like build a business, and you're trying to be in a more positive light and everything. When you start separating your time from the people that are kind of negatively impacting your growth, before you find a new set of people that you're hanging out with that are other business owners and people, there's a very lonely time in that stretch, right? Where you feel, and the emotion of you feeling like you're not part of anything, or like you feel that you're alienating your friends, but you have nobody else. And then you start to say, well, my business isn't making enough money. Is it worth me alienating my friends? And this is the time when most people quit. And this time is around like the 6 month to 1 year time frame is when this usually starts to happen. And so you have to be okay with being lonely in that middle time, use this time to really dial in your growth even more and spend more time diving deep into these subjects, because eventually you're going to open up a whole new avenue of people that will like cheer you on, will coach you through. Now, everybody has those friends. Like, I still have friends that I hang out with. They don't negatively impact me because they still support they don't understand what I do. They think I'm crazy, but they don't negatively impact me. But there's another set of people that I used to hang out with that would just be like constantly saying I'm crazy and I'm never going to do it. And all these other things. And if you hang out with those people and you let that little voice, dictate the same thing that those people are saying, like, who are you to do this? And you're never going to be successful and all that stuff. It is amazing how just a little bit, when you're in that range of like, should I continue moving forward or should I quit? If you have too much of that like negative influence on one side, you'll quit for sure.
Oh, yeah.
If you limit that negative influence, you will be more likely to move forward. Now, this doesn't mean you have to like break up with your friends, be like, hey, I'm not hanging out with you anymore because you're not serving me. It doesn't happen that way. It's a gradual thing, because it's not like you dislike those people. It's not like you all of a sudden you move into the personal growth and then you're just like, you're too good for everybody and you can't hang out with them. That's not the way it is. It's a more gradual thing where, like, if you feel that your dream is more important than drinking beers on the weekend with some people that aren't serving you, then you have to make that separation, because if you don't, you'll quit before you see success. Right. And I think that's one of the biggest things. And this is why they say being an entrepreneur is lonely. In a lot of ways it is, because you do spend a lot of time alone and figuring things out. And it feels like, and this when you have employees and stuff like that, that's not really a connection. That's more of like, you're supposed to have that as a certain type of relationship. And so again, you feel lonely. And if you don't have a support system, it is even worse, right? Yeah. Me, I was extremely lucky. My family and everything, they supported me all the way. So I had that support structure. And if I didn't, it would have been much more difficult to move forward. But at least I had made that separation from people that weren't serving me.
Yeah. Yeah. So there's two things here that I want to point out, because I mean, you're spot on with what you're saying. It is like a very interesting phenomenon when you go through it. You're like, oh my gosh. And it, like you said, like it doesn't happen like instantly. It's almost like you don't even recognize that all of a sudden you're like, oh, this isn't important to me anymore. Right. Or like, this isn't a place that I want to spend my time. And also I will say too, that like, I mean, what you're putting into the world is what you're going to attract. And also what you're putting into the world is what you will detract. Right. Meaning that like those individuals or those, groups of individuals that you're spending your time with that do not serve you or that are not helping you progress, in most cases, you won't really, I mean, like you said, Tyler, you won't have to say like, oh, hey, just letting you know, I'm not going to hang out with you anymore because like, like you're not going to have to like have conversations like this. It will almost happen naturally that all of a sudden you'll start seeing the dynamics in your life shift a bit, where those relationships that are maybe negative or that don't help you progress will just start fading out, like almost naturally on their own, right?
Oh, they do. And your true friends will not care about the fact that they spend less time with you.
Yeah.
Because I have a few of those left, and you start to see really fast like who your true friends are, right? Because if they're not your true friends, if the only reason you were any good to them is because you went out drinking beers with them on the weekend, then what kind of friendship is that truly in the end anyway?
True.
So you start to see straight away, like, were they my actual friend, or were they a person I hung out with and drank with and did these other things? So you will be surprised. You will always have those friends that are true to you, that like, no matter what, like I have a buddy, I haven't seen him in forever. And he just came down to visit, and it's not that he doesn't support me. He doesn't understand me. He thinks I'm crazy still, but he doesn't negatively talk to me about it either. Right. Yeah. And he doesn't say, oh, it's because you never hang out with me that we can't be friends anymore. It's like, we can get together. We had a great time for, the week that was here, and then he went away. So you're going to still have friends like that. Right. But you need, like, business is like, it's like anything, it's either if you put energy into your business and you actually focus on your business, it will grow. If you don't, it's just like not watering your garden. Like if you have a garden and you just don't water it and you just walk away from it and you're not paying attention to it, what's going to happen? Everything's going to die. The exact same thing with your business. So if you walk away from your business and you're not watering it on a daily basis, then it won't grow. Right.
Yeah. Yeah. Very true. Okay. So I want to put some actionable advice on this, because you're right. I mean, absolutely. It can get super lonely. And I mean, any transition, right? Any transition like this is difficult, especially when you're moving into such a different quality of life and really trying to elevate what you're doing on a, financial, personal, business level. So let's talk action wise. What are some really important things that can be done to help with this transition? And I know that, you and I both are part of a really big community of entrepreneurs, Tyler, that and that's super, super helpful to have the support system, like you said, of individuals that are doing the same thing you are. There's another topic though that I would love your perspective on, because again, this is something that you and I both talk about quite a bit, and that is being clear with our, personal circle, with our spouse, with our family members, of what it is we're doing and why we're doing it and how that helps. So can you talk about that a little bit? I mean, in terms of your personal inner circle, how important it is to make sure that they're, on the same page with you.
Yeah. So like for the first subject, I think the biggest thing that you can do is networking with other business owners or joining like a networking group of some sort. See that like, and in a lot of ways, the, network marketing companies and stuff like that, they serve a really good purpose, in my opinion. For people that first start out with businesses, I think it's a great place. So if you have a buddy that's like hounding you to get into some kind of a product, and you have an idea to build another business of some sort, it's not a bad idea to join something like this in the beginning to really get an understanding of how business works. Because what these companies a lot of times do, I mean, their tactics sometimes are not the best and these other things, but what it does, it teaches you a lot of basic business ideas of like the personal growth and, talking to people about your product or service, getting good at sales. Getting good at sales is one of the most important things to becoming an entrepreneur, because whatever business you're building, you need to sell your service. Like everybody that grows a successful business is good at sales at one point or another, right? So getting into one of these network and marketing companies is a good way to install yourself in a community of like-minded people right away. Super easy. And a lot of times these companies are very low investment, so you can actually get a lot from it from not a big investment. So amazing. I think they serve a very good purpose. And I think that's a great place to start, in my opinion. Outside of that, joining networking groups, like local business groups, like on Facebook, you can join local business Facebook groups, get in there. There's lots of like-minded people there. It's just like really installing yourself in places where there's more positivity and more growth-minded people, of like people that are building business. Like, man, I go to parties like we have like entre events and stuff. You go to those events, and your whole time you're drinking just as like you would with your friends, but instead of talking about fights and all these other things that you used to do when you were in high school, you're talking about business and growth and what we're going to do. And like, I get goosebumps just thinking about that right now. Cause I'm like, I get fired up about doing that. Like that's the stuff that I love to do. And it becomes way more enjoyable and you get addicted to that. And then that's what makes you want to continue moving down the path. So the more that you can get around other people just talking about business, moving into business direction, the easier it is to keep moving in that direction as well, in my opinion.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yep. That's spot on. So, okay. So tell us, tell us the secrets when it comes to your spouse, to your relationship, to your family members. Cause I know you're really close with your family. You said they've been a huge, huge area of support for you in your entrepreneurial journey. How? Because and let me add a second layer to this too. A lot of the entrepreneurs that we work with, you're kind of crazy to be an entrepreneur, right? Like to go out on your own and say, hey, you know what? I'm not going to rely on a salary. I'm not going to rely on a W-2 paycheck every other week. I'm just going to try to figure it out myself. You're a little crazy. So how do you get that, that support from your family members?
I think the biggest thing for me is my own belief in myself is what made them believe in me in the end. Right. Now, the one thing that I haven't done extremely well is paint the vision for them for what I'm doing. But I think the reason why I've never done a really good job at that specifically, like sitting them down and be like, hey, this is where I'm going. And this is something I want to do. And we are going to do this as a project. I'm going to do this, like actually like on a whiteboard, like present to them like, hey, this is what my vision is. This is where I want to go. This is why I'm doing what I'm doing. So they can understand why you're working so much. And so they understand that it's not because you're trying to avoid them, but it's because you're trying to push for something bigger. And that's your dream and everything. When they understand that, now, if they truly love you, they're going to support you because of your belief. The thing is that with me, I've never actually sat them down and done that, but it was my complete belief and my complete, to get into this. Like, for instance, when I got started into business, my son was going to be born in 3 months. We had like $5,000 in the bank saved. That was it. And I got into this MLM, and it would cost me $4,700 plus tax to get into this thing. So basically every bit of our savings was gone. So I had to come and tell my wife, my girlfriend at the time. I just told her, I was like, I spent all of our savings for when our son is born to get into this MLM, and she absolutely come unglued. But what happened is I had such a belief in myself. There was something inside me that said, this is the right move. And it was just the honest, like, I just told her, like, I don't know how to explain it to you, but I said, I know this is the thing that I need to do. And that's what got me onto the direction. And this is 5 years later. I've never had to go back to work. Well, the one stretch for 2 months, that was it. And it was just my belief. So eventually she came around, and then through proof of action, she started to believe in me more and more as I started to actually generate money. Actually, I started becoming a better person. And she started to see my growth as a human being. So she couldn't help but support me in that. Right. And it was the same thing for my mom. My mom said the same thing. She was like, it wasn't that I was supporting what you were doing. It was more of I was supporting your belief in what you were doing. Right. So
yeah. Oh my gosh.
Believing in yourself is huge.
That like gave me chills a little bit, Tyler, because that resonates so strongly with me. I mean, very, very similar and story, on my end. But what you said, like at the beginning, you don't have to, don't expect that you're going to have 100% support. It's through your proof of action. I love that you said that, the proof of action that is going to build up that trust and build up the enrollment from your family members and from your spouse even. I love that so much. I'll just share really quickly. When I very first decided that I was going to start the agency, I literally came home from my secure, safe little, 40-hour per week job. I came home to my wife and said, hey, I'm going to quit this job in 2 months and I'm going to start my own business. And she was like, what? No, you're not. No, you're not. That's like terrifying. How are we going to pay our bills? How are we going to do this? How's, X, Y, Z. And it was absolutely through exact what you said, right? Proof of action that exactly, I was like, okay, watch this. I'll make it work. And same thing, I did it. Never had to go back to the job. But yeah, so I love that you said that, because I think that it's especially for, those starting out, very first starting out, it's like, well, I almost expect that those that love me are just going to give me 100% support. But if you've never done it, how can you expect them to give you their 100% support? Like, you got to prove it. And it's not necessarily proving that you're going to bring in X amount of money. It's proving that you're not going to give up.
Yeah. Well, that's the biggest thing. Yeah. And it's about also having like that just complete conviction in your dreams, and I'm not being like, there is no other option. Right. And that's what it was for me. I got to a point where it was like, I'm just extremely lucky, as she's been amazing. That was that one time. And then there were some other times I did some stupid things too. But I've done like a lot of things, but now, like, every single time that I make a move that doesn't make sense to her, it always turns out better. So she trusts me 100%. Now she doesn't even question me. Right. If I make a move, even though it seems absolutely insane, like when I walked away from that big contract running Facebook ads for another big agency to pursue my own dreams of like having my own business grow, and then having, doing coaching, which I love. So when I walked away from that, it was a substantial financial loss. Right. Which is scary. But I almost like, I don't know, I almost enjoy that fear. It's a weird thing. It's like, when I move towards that fear, it always turns out better in the end. And I've just noticed that about my path. So when I did this, like, normally she would have, in the past, she would have flipped out, because it was way more than the $4,000 I threw away last time. Let's put it that way. It was substantially more than that. And when I walked away from that, she barely questioned me. Like she was a little bit concerned, obviously, because we have a certain way of living, and I have a family to feed. But when I made that, when I was so convicted, I was like, no, I know this is the right move. She just completely was like, yeah, well, I trust you, and whatever happens, happens. Right. So I'm extremely lucky to have that. The people that don't have that kind of support, you need to prove more than I would have had to, for instance. So like, if you have a spouse that's like, what are you doing? You're crazy. And they're constantly down on you. There's one of two options, right? Now, you cannot be with somebody long-term that doesn't support your dreams, in my opinion. That is like the one thing. If your spouse will not move to your side, at least at one point or another, It is, you have to choose either your dreams or your spouse, because one of them will win eventually. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And the sooner that you make that choice, the better it is for you. And the thing is, and that's a hard decision. Like I'm not saying this is easy. And this is and I'm not saying as soon as like, so say if you go to start a business tomorrow, I'm not saying like, go, dump your spouse the next day because they don't support you. You have to give them time to come to your camp. Right.
Yeah.
But they will be an anchor, like a lead weight you're pulling along with you. And business is hard enough without pulling a lead weight along with you. So you have to decide. Most of the time, if they truly love you and the love is truly there, they will support you once they see you change, right? It's not always that, I have a story around this. Is very, a big thing that's happened in my life is that my sister was having problems, at one point in her marriage at one point, and she was like, she didn't know what to do. So she came to me and we were talking. I said, all you need to do is more focus on yourself, the way that you approach situations, the way that you look at him, the way you look at everything else, and things will start to change. He will start to change. And that's what happened. She stopped focusing on the negative thing. She started focusing on the positive thing. They're still together and they're happier than they ever were in the marriage that they had, because all she did is change herself. So when you get into that business structure, if your spouse doesn't support you right away, the best way for them to get on your camp is for you to change, and for you not to resent them for not supporting you. Because if you resent them for not supporting you and you focus on the fact that they don't support you, you will see more and more circumstances in which they don't support you. And then that resentment grows. And then it becomes, you're now in a battle between your spouse and the fact that, so now you're in between those two lives. If you stop focusing on the fact that they don't support you and become a better person so they do support you, it's a much different scenario, right? In my opinion, that's the one piece that is a transition. Now, I had a little bit of a lucky time where I didn't have to go really far down that path. But man, could you imagine being in a situation where you're having a son with somebody and you spend every dollar that you have on something that, and most people think MLMs are a scam to begin with. So like, she thought I was just threw my money into a scam. So I had to, through action, becoming a better person, showing her that I was actually happier, showing these things. That's what brought her into the camp. Mm-hmm. It happened pretty quickly, but that was the only way I did it. Like if I was the same person and I was still like negative and I wasn't moving in the right direction, I wasn't happier, and I wasn't proving to her that I was taking action steps to grow the business, then of course she would have never came to my camp. Right.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. That's so true. Yep. And it takes time. It absolutely takes time. I mean, very similar. I feel extremely blessed to have a very supportive and a healthy communication in our relationship. Right. And I think that's super important, but it does take time still. Mm-hmm. Right. Absolutely. Yeah. It'd be fun, Tyler. It would be cool to bring on our spouses to do a little Q&A one of these episodes. That'd be fun.
That would be hilarious. Yeah, I would love to see that. Yeah, because I mean, I then I would know for sure. But yeah, she's and the funny thing is like she's completely not like me, right? Like, I'm more outgoing. But like when I first got into business, I was very, very shy. I was like, I'd go to events, sit at the very back of the room, head down, wouldn't talk to nobody. Now I'm completely different, right?
Yeah, which is so funny because that's not even
opposite.
you.
Huh?
Yeah, that's funny to hear because that's not even like I wouldn't even recognize that Tyler.
No, exactly. Yeah. That's a completely different scenario. But that's because like in the end, I wasn't as confident as I am now. Like I'm more confident in my abilities. I'm happier with myself. I used to hate myself. I used to be like very negative, and I was very involved in lots of things for like I was just kind of trying to hurt myself basically in a way. And so that took, when I transitioned out of that and like started to be like actually love myself and be okay with who I am, everything became better because you can be more confident when you're okay with who you are. You don't really care what everybody thinks about you, and it's easy to be confident, right? Mm-hmm. Confidence is a very key piece of the puzzle as well, in my opinion. I think, in business, the more confident you are, the faster you will grow. Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. Okay, so we're gonna switch gears with the time that we have left here. I've got some quick fire questions for you. You ready? All right. First thing that comes to mind, you got 30 seconds on each question. All right. What would you tell the version of yourself? What advice would you give yourself when you were very first starting your entrepreneurial journey?
I would say, get more dialed in on the reason in which you're doing things rather than just money.
Yes. That's Guys,
Yeah, I
write
guess
that
that wasn't 30
down.
seconds. I go a little deeper, but yes, that's,
No, that's good.
like being really, specific on a bigger reason on what you're doing things and just for money. Cause when I first started business, it was just for money, and that, it only, if money was enough of a motivator, we'd all be rich. So you need to be doing it for something bigger than money. Right.
Mm-hmm. Oh, so good. Okay. Second question. What are the top 3 books that have skyrocketed your success as a business owner?
Oh man, that's a good one. I would definitely say The Magic is number one. One of the other ones that was extremely good for me was Atomic Habits. That was a good book. But I read that pretty recently, so that wasn't really back then. And one of the other ones that I read back, I'm trying to remember. There's so many books I've read now. I would have to say Happy Pocket Full of Money, probably.
Oh, I haven't read that one. I'm gonna have to check that out. Okay. Awesome. All right. Next question. What is the first hire you should make as an agency owner?
I would say virtual assistant, I think, is the easy first one, because they're really like a utility knife. They can help you in a bunch of different areas, and they're, so you don't have to be like specific, say like hire one person. So yeah, I'd say virtual assistant is definitely the first, but just to help you with like the little tasks, like, the onboardings and all these different, like anything that you could hire out that like isn't serving you to do by yourself. And VAs can help you with all that stuff. So definitely that.
Yeah. Oh gosh. Yeah. Ditto to that. I wish I would have, man, I talk about this a lot, but I wish that I would have like been in the delegation mindset earlier on in my business.
Yeah, I'm still not all the way there. It's terrible. I'm getting there, but it takes a while. Sometimes and the thing is that brings up a good point. The longer that you do everything in your business, the harder it is to let it go. So start delegating instantly. That's like one of the biggest things.
So good. Yes. Oh, that's such good advice. Awesome. Well, Tyler, thank you so very much for having this conversation with me. Seriously, our conversations are always so much fun. Tell our listeners where they can find you if they want to connect.
Well, it's at Caldwell 425 on both Instagram and Facebook. I have pages on. I don't really do much on there, but bluecollarleads.ca, that's my website, and you can always contact me on there as well.
Thank you for joining us for another episode of the Marketing Mastermind podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please like, follow, rate our show, and share with your friends on social media. You can also join our community by visiting us online at marketingmastermindpodcast.com. Thanks for joining us, and we'll catch you on the next episode.